Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and attending the second webinar of our series for the Foundation Coach course, which is a new PCA nationally accredited course. It's NCAS approved. Just to give everyone a recap of where we've been, the Foundation Coach manual is available to buy online through Just Go in the shop, but don't worry if you don't have one for tonight. You can still we're going to be working our way through the unit modules, and you can still follow along with the webinar. You can buy that later down the track. Following on, just to let you know that we did do an original webinar that gave an overview of the Foundation Coach, and then on the 14th of March we did a second webinar which ran through the first few units of the Foundation Coach manual, and that covered off the syllabus, the role of the coach at Pony Club, safety and risk management, and coaching children. As part of the Foundation Coach course, there is an Essentials Sports Australia online community coaching essentials course, and the links to that can be found either on our website or at the beginning of any of the webinars. And also recommended is the Gear Checker webinar and accreditation. So there is on our YouTube channel and under our coaching pages on the Pony Club Australia site, there's a link to the gear checking webinar and also to the exam that goes with that. You can also ask your state officers if you can't find any of those links. I'll have them for you as well. My name is Sally Wiseman, and I'm the Participation and Development Manager for Pony Club Australia. Again, thank you all for coming along tonight and giving up an hour of your time. I'm actually going to hand over to Michelle Newham, who is our Member Services Manager for Pony Club Australia, and she is going to run through the overview for tonight. Lyndon, thank you for that question. Anyone can add questions into the chat and I'll respond to them throughout the meeting as well. Okay, Michelle, are you there? Looks like Michelle may have dropped off. Let me see if I can start this for you. Oh, she's back in again.
Hello.
Welcome back, Michelle. Here's Michelle. I'll hand it over to Michelle now.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, technical difficulties. Okay, so this is module 2 of 4 of the Foundation Coach webinar. So we'll be going over the unit 2.5 in our manual, teaching commands, terminology and arena figures, unit 2.6 planning, unit 2.7 control of a group, unit 3.1 basic horse management and handling. So that's all from pages 14 to 38 in our coaching manual.
Michelle, do you want to share your screen?
All right. So now, okay, so our teaching commands, terminology and arena figures. So as coaches, we need to clearly convey to the riders what is to be done, who will be doing it and where it is to be done. So if we've got a group of riders going around the arena, we can say, okay, Connor, you're leading, and when you get to letter C on the arena, I want you to start trotting. So there's clear, they know who's going to do it, where it's getting done, and what we want them to do. So when we give our commands, we need to be clear, concise and audible. Make sure that every rider can hear what we have to say. So it's important that we use a good voice so that riders can hear what we're saying. And all our commands should be spoken slowly and clearly, and they must be loud enough to be heard easily, including over wind or rain. or anything else that might be going on around the arena. So we need to try and position ourselves upwind, and we need to allow the riders time for preparation to their transition. So there's no use calling out, okay, I want you to trot now. We want to first say, okay, riders, we're going to prepare to trot. So it gives them time to collect their horse up, get the aids all correct, and then we're going to say, and now we can trot. Give the riders time to execute each command when we're asking it. Okay, so we've got a short video to play.
Right, so now we're just going to have a quick talk about terminology. You will see this in the lessons we're going to do, but I'd like to just run through it now in case there's any questions. So when we're teaching in the arena or coaching, depending on the standard of rider that you have, one of the first words that we will all need to use, or group of words, is go large. And what that means is that we go around the arena, we follow the track, we can cut the corner here, but otherwise we're about a half a metre off the track, maybe a bit deep there, half a metre off the track and following the arena. So when we want them to move up or down a gate, then we always need to prepare them. So you would say ride, which means the whole group, prepare to trot, and then ride, trot now. So in that break, you need to give them enough time to collect the horse up, to look where they're going, make sure there's enough space that they're not going to run into the rider in front of them. Be aware that they may even have to circle across the arena if they're too close. So you need to give them enough room to make a decision and to give the horse enough room to move off. So it would be the same if we were trotting, we wanted them to walk. Ride, prepare to walk, ride, walk now.
Okay, so the next thing that we move on to is the coach's position relative to riders. So whenever we're coaching, remember we're also supervising. So where we position ourselves in relation to the group, it's important for the safety of the riders and also of how effective our lessons will be. So we've always got to position ourselves to the outside of the ride so that we can see everyone at once. And that way we'll also be able to see both sides of the riders. So you can see there in a trail riding situation, you'd have a coach preferably at the back and one at the front if you've got enough people around. And the other one's a small jumping lesson where the coach is standing on the outside of the arena so they can see all of the riders. So there's another short video to play.
The positioning of the instructor when you've got a group of riders is really important. When you're, for instance, if you're just taking a group out and you wanting them to just ride on a circle, make sure you put your witches' hats out to define the area. So for instance, and these are not particularly wonderful drawings, people, but just here we've got witches' hats and we've got the horses going around the circle. Now, when we are teaching a group like this on a circle, you must position yourself in a position to be able to see all those riders all the time. Now, this is a safety thing. It's very important because if you have riders going behind you, or you, for instance, if you stood in the center of the circle, at some stage there's going to be riders behind you. Now, you can't see what they're doing. They can't hear you very well. And if there's something about to happen, some problem, you aren't aware of that until it's happened. And you need to make sure that you can see them all the time. So the best place for you to be is out on the outside of the circle. Now, not only is that a safe place to be able to teach from, to be safe for all the riders, but it's a much better position to be able to teach from to help them with their riding position, the way their horse is going. It's a much You can see them coming towards you, going away from you, the inside, the outside, everything about that horse and rider. And you can see them all the time. So that is one of the most important things that you need to observe when you're teaching, is where you position yourself. Now, if you're teaching in a dressage arena or a rectangular shape area, the best place to try and be is between either behind E or B. Now, if that's probably the best place from everybody being able to hear you. So if you stand here, you can see everyone, plus they can hear you. But if, for instance, you're doing some exercise where they're coming down the long side or up the centre line, you could position yourself down here, but you need to be able to be heard. So your voice has to be fairly strong to do that. Now, speaking about voice and being able to be heard, if you haven't got a strong voice, you really need to use some sort of amplification so that your voice carries, because that is a safety thing as well. If you're teaching and people can't hear you, something could be going wrong, you can't get their attention, or you've got to be able to project your voice loudly enough. So if you do use some sort of amplification, I think it's really worthwhile, and it is a safety thing as well, being able to be heard. But to start with, when you first use it, don't, for instance, use your speaker when you're being assessed, because you get a little bit self-conscious when you first use it, because everybody can hear you. But that's okay, you want that to happen, but you've got to feel comfortable doing it. So get comfortable doing it, maybe use it at home first before you come and use it at a rally day. Now, for instance, if we then have an indoor arena, and obviously you can't stand on the outside of an indoor arena because you can't see anybody. So if you have to come into the arena, what you can do is put witches' hats or poles or something across the end of the arena, and then you can stand relatively safely in there. That will create, still they'll be able to ride their corners and they're not going to come down around you. You don't want to be standing here because you don't want them to ride around you, but this will create a good safe area for you to stand, and they also can keep riding the track around the arena correctly. Now, when you're doing some more active riding, you're out doing some jumping, cross country, different things like that, you need to, again, still be able to see all the riders, most importantly, but you're out in a much bigger area. Now, when you are teaching a jumping lesson and you have, say, for instance, you've got your group circling around here, what you will do is call one off the circle each, one at a time, to come down over this, through the grid or over the jumps, round and return to the circle. So you've got to be able to watch all these riders, and in particular the one going over the grid. So you need to be able to stand in this position so you can focus on the person going over the grid, but you can also keep an eye on all these riders here. So really important that you observe this and you can keep an eye on. And this is a really good way of organising your group and having them all keep moving. So these ones are moving on a circle, you call one at a time off, and you really, once there's jumps involved, one at a time is much more, well, it's a much safer practice than having everybody following through. Now, for instance, if we then have some bending race poles, and you're doing a bending race, we need to put our riders safely, if they're lined up, safely to the side of the bending poles. Not down at the end, not where they're going to be finishing, and not even to the side at the end, because you'll get little ponies who'll bend through the poles but whiz straight around to the other horses. So if they're back here, as they're going through the poles, they're concentrating on what they're doing, they finish down here, then they can return back to the other horses. So safety, keeping the other horses to the side and up to the more to the centre of where the poles are, and you then can stand and talk to these riders and instruct here. If you want to, and you've got a big voice, you can stand over the other side here, but totally up to you in which position you'd like to do that. So these are just scenarios and covering different aspects, different disciplines of where you need to position yourself. And probably it is one of the most important things is where you position yourself and how you conduct those lessons.
Okay, that was a really good video on where to stand and things like that. That is really important for us as coaches to ensure that we are standing in a safe position where we can see everyone all the time. So we move on to arena tracks and figures. So we've got a few pictures here of a dressage arena. Now your dressage arenas can vary in size, so you can have 20 by 60 meters for your competition level, or for your lower level competitions, you can have 20 by 40 meters. Then you've got your jumping lesson arenas of 40 by 70, and mounted games lessons of 40 by 60. So as you've seen in the video, the large outside of the track is where you can tell riders to go large. And then you've got the centre line, which is obviously down the middle of the arena. And you've also got your diagonal. So you've got your long diagonal or your short diagonal. So a long diagonal goes from your FXH or your MXK, HXF, KXM. So they're your long diagonals. And your short diagonals are where you're only going halfway across the arena. So your MIE, ELF, KLB, BIH, things like that. So within our arena, we can also do the circles. So if we know the size of our arena, and it's always usually by 20 meters in a dressage arena, so you can fit 3 20-meter circles in a 60 by 20 arena. So obviously we've got diagrams there of where your 20-meter circles go. You can also move on to things like serpentines, where they loop through. That's covered a lot more in the prelim manual. So for our foundation coach, we only need to know the basic arena tracks and figures, but if you've got more knowledge, well, that's fantastic as well. So our planning of our lessons. So planning's very important. It does make the lesson more enjoyable and it maximises the use of the time that we have. So as a foundation coach, you're not required to set a lesson plan if you don't feel that you're capable. So it is important that if you're going to be coaching, that you do get a lesson handed to you or download one from the website so that you've got a plan for the day. But you will need to be able to understand and follow that plan. So in a lesson plan, it is important to make sure we have a topic, we prepare, we have an introduction, we've got a safety check, a gear check, an explanation for the riders, a demonstration, warm up, execution, cool down, feedback and evaluation. It's also good on your lesson plan if you have a equipment list of what you're going to require before your lesson. So we do have another short video on planning.
So we always start with an introduction. Now with the introduction, you do a couple of things. First of all, you introduce yourself, and then we'd like you to introduce your topic. Hi everybody, my name's Sarah. Today we're going to work on 20-meter circles, and preferably at that stage, the reason for the topic, what you're trying to achieve, so your goal for the topic. We put this in here because as we go a little bit later on, we're going to talk about safety. We need to know that the riders are happy to do that topic. So if we're going to do a 20-meter circle at walk and trot, then we will explain that to them. And then when we come into our safety section, I'll show you the appropriate time for you to ask the next question. So then we have a safety check. So there's quite a few sections in this safety check that I'd like you to follow. The first one is our emergency stop. So what that is if I hold my hand up and call out halt, if you're not sure, just have a look around at me, because I'll hold my hand up high and say halt or stop. I need you to come to a stop straight away for me, because I've seen something that's going very badly wrong. And I need to make sure you're safe. So if you could just halt as quickly and quietly as you can and wait for further instruction, I'll tell you when it's safe to proceed. So we would like you to do that at the beginning of each lesson. The second thing that we're after here is the medical check. So you can do that when you do a gear check. You would still need to say it at the beginning here. So we are riding a 20-metre circle today. If anyone feels for any reason there might be some way or something that's happened to them this week that will make it difficult for them, or they're on a difficult horse that will make them a little bit worried, I'm still going to put that underneath the medical check. When I come around and do a gear check, can you please let me know if you've got an ankle injury from soccer, football, netball, or anything that you might be worried about completing that lesson? That's when I'd like you to tell me. So now I'm just going to have a quick check of your helmet. Can you just tell me if there's any medical information you need to let me know? So then we have a safe area. Check. So what I'm looking for here is a couple of things. I'm looking for the external. So what I'm referring to there is the gate closed? Is it safe within the area? Are there other horses cantering about that might cause an issue? And then I'm also looking for the surface. So if we're in sand, is the surface the same all the way around, or is it boggy in some areas, not hard in the other? So if you have found those spots, that's okay, but you just need to tell the riders there's an issue here, so just be careful. And if it's something that you can't fix, then you can put a witch's hat over it if it's a hole. We're in an indoor arena, so it's pretty safe. It looks like all the other horses outside are being very quiet today, so we shouldn't have any other safety issues. If you're at all concerned, just let me know. Okay, the surface is fantastic, so we don't need to worry about that. It's even all the way around. So they're just a couple of things that you need to make sure that you've covered so all the riders are safe. All right, and so then we would do our gear check. So with the gear check, that's the standard gear check for your state or territory. So you will go through everything that's required there. I'm just going to come and do a quick check of your helmet. I did do a gear check previously just before you came in. So can you just wiggle your helmet for me just so I can make sure that it's tight enough? Fantastic. And then in that same time, I'd also find out horse rider history, because we need to know how long they have been together to work out if they may need a little more help in that lesson. The standard, the level of the horse, maybe what it's done previously, whether it's done camp drafting and sporting and it's coming to a dressage lesson, you would need to know that just to help them along a little more, or whether it's been a Grand Prix horse previously and therefore you shouldn't have too much problem with a 20-metre circle. Okay, so how old's your horse?
Okay, so this is Elliot. He's almost 17.
Yes.
I've had him for 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently competing in 105 one-star eventing. Yeah.
Perfect. So you definitely need your 20-metre circles because we need to win the dressage. That's great. Okay, so in that information, once you've done your gear checking, I go to each person and do all that one at a time so it's very clear in your head and you've had a bit of a personal conversation with them, so you build up a rapport right from the beginning. So we have a warm-up, and then we have a demonstration, and then we have an explanation. Now, the warm-up, we would like to be as relevant as possible to our topic. Now, the reason I've put warm-up here is it is a little bit weather dependent. So if it's winter, then we probably don't want to warm up and then bring them back to a halt and do your demonstration and your explanation, because that might take maybe 5-10 minutes where they all cool down again, and then you have to warm them up and send them out again. So in summer, however, this might be great because certainly where I am, it can be 45 degrees heat. So a warm-up would be great to then have a break and let everybody cool down again while you discuss what's going to happen. So this can interchange depending on your weather.
we are going to work on the circles, but I think we'll do a little warm up first and then come back to the circles because it can be a little technical working on this circle. So what I'd like to check to make sure that our warm up's a little relevant to what we're doing is, can you turn? And for safety reasons, can you stop? So I'm just going to check that out. All right, so then we can move to our demonstration and explanation. Now the demonstration is very important because most of us are visual learners. So it would help if you could either have a whiteboard or you can demonstrate yourself. You can send a rider out to show what's happening, but then you have to remember that that rider hasn't seen it. So then you would have to send another rider out so all riders have seen what you're doing. More than happy for you to take an iPad and show them if that's easier, because that's a quick, easy method just to show each individual rider. Just be aware if you're going to do that, and this would also apply for gear check, that if you have any paper that you're trying to help give you notes, it needs to go in your back pocket or out. You can't gear check with anything around a horse's head. So this goes straight with your demonstration as well. Just be aware that some horses might not like moving iPads. So please be careful with that. So you've all taken notes about the different types of demonstrations. So definitely we would like a whiteboard. For me, I find that's quite easy to explain where the riders are going. So you can draw an accurate circle. Then we're going to do the explanation of that. And I do it at the same time as demonstration because it does make it easier for the riders to learn if they can see while you're talking. All right, so if everyone has those notes, I'm just going to move back up the top here because I've run out of space. So once we've done our explanation, then we move on with our execution of the lesson or the session. So here you would have 1 or 2 exercises. What we're trying to do here is have chaining of events happen. So for instance, for my 20-meter circle, we would start that with walk, and explain the difference between corners and circle lines. And then we would work on our 20-meter circle at walk on 1 rein. And then we would change rein and do the same on the other rein. Then we would do that at trot. Then our progression could be that we would move to a figure of 8. And at this stage, I would still start with witches' hats for my 20-meter circle and keep them for my figure of 8. And then my final progression would be to remove the witches' hats and see if the riders have really understood where that 20-meter circle tangent points are. Once we've done our execution of the session, then we're going to either finish it up unless you have enough time to do another exercise. So we would always have an exercise up our sleeve. So in this case, I would have had serpentine loops ready to go, just in case. And then lastly, once we've finished all our exercises, then we need to put in a cool down. Now with your cool down, I'm happy that if you have reached the end of your lesson, that maybe you don't need to watch the riders cool down, but you definitely need to mention it. So I would say that for the last 5-10 minutes or the next 5-10 minutes, that they are cooling themselves down to make sure they disperse the lactic acid and bring the heart rate back to normal. So what I'd like you to do is cool down for me when we finish the lesson by just walking them for 5-10 minutes with their long reins in this same arena, because there are no more lessons here today, just to make sure that we disperse the lactic acid throughout their body and that their heart rate comes back to resting for the end of the lesson. So that's a very important part. You can do this while you're doing your feedback, but quite often with the feedback, it's nice to have that rapport going again and bring them back so they're with you. But there's no rule about that. If you'd like to watch them cool down and you've run out of time, then you can still talk to them. So there's a couple of different ways that we could do this feedback. You can have what we call a feedback sandwich. So that's where we have a positive comment, or we call it a negative comment, and then we finish with a positive comment. Or I quite often ask them their opinion on what they think they need to do for homework, because then you can actually check whether they've really understood what you're doing, and then you can back the information up yourself. So for instance, if they say, I have to keep my thumbs on top and I need to keep looking where you're going, then you can say, absolutely, that's perfect. So I'm very happy with that. But if you could practice your homework, then I'll check on it next time. So you're still doing that positive from you, but getting them to work out what they need to do.
Okay, so that was really good, some really good points in there. So remember, with our lesson planning, there are some plans in our foundation booklet if we need to look back and do some simple lesson plans. And we'll also be adding more lesson plans to our website shortly. The other important thing is at the end of each lesson, you may not be able to do it straight away, but when you go home, make sure you have reflection on your lesson yourself and how you think your lesson went. That's very important to find out how we can improve our next lesson. So then we've got control of a group. So when we've got a group, it's important that we go through a briefing so that writers are briefed on the safety practices, procedures, and the appropriate behaviour that we're requiring of them. And we've got our writing. So we have single files. So single files where we have one person leading and we have a horse's space between everyone else and everyone's following directly behind. We've got our open order, which is our second picture there. So that's where the riders are spread evenly around the arena. So there can be more than 2 to 3 horses spaces. They're just all spaced out nice and evenly. And then we have our independent riding, where riders are just spread out around the arena, but the slower riders will be on the inside of the arena and your faster riders towards the outside of the arena. So it's important that when we're doing independent riding that our riders are all aware of the safety and that the slower ones do go on the inside with the fast ones to the outside, and always making sure that they're aware of their surroundings. Okay, so knowing how to manage a horse exhibiting flight response. So flight response, it's not just bolting, it includes your bucking, your rearing, kicking even. So it's important to monitor signs of increasing stress, give frequent breaks to our riders and our horses, and watch for signs of tension. Often we'll find that a lot of young horses or green horses that haven't been out a lot, they're the ones that will experience these flight responses. So it's important for us, as soon as we notice that a horse is exhibiting flight response, that we know what we're going to do next. So we need to use our emergency stop in our group. We need to encourage the whole ride to relax, and we need to remain alert. We need to talk to the rider that's having the difficulty, and we need to use our discretion on what to do as well. So, you know, it's that there's a lot of different things and a lot of different scenarios where a horse may experience the flight response. So you need to decide whether you can take that horse away from the group, ask the rider to dismount if it's really bad, or is it better to keep the horse in the group? All things that, these are things that you sort of have to decide depending on the scenario. So it's important that after we've had an incident that we debrief and make sure that everyone's okay, and that if the rider wishes to retire, that they do so safely. So it's always important, like the rest of the group, even though their horse might not have been the one that had the flight response, they might be quite upset because it was very nerve-wracking for them and quite a shock to see another horse acting the way that it did. So it's important that we debrief and let the riders know that it's okay, and if they have any issues, to talk to you. So this is just a very short video of a few horses with flight response.
I came to get down, I came to get down. So get down your seat and jump around, jump around, jump around.
Okay, so now we're moving on to Unit 3, so our horse care and suitable paddock checklist. So we've got to remember when we're putting a horse out in the paddock, we want it to be comfortable and well looked after. So we're looking for a well-maintained area. So checking our fences are safe. There's no bits of wire or anything in the paddock that the horse is going to hurt itself on. We want to make sure that it's free of noxious plants and rubbish. So make sure there's nothing in the paddock the horse can eat that's going to make it sick. And sometimes even some of the woods that are in the paddock, just be careful that they're not poisonous to the horses. So we want to make sure that we've got adequate shade in the paddocks for the amount of horses that we have. So you don't always have to have a shelter, but the horse does need some type of shade. So it is important that we have either trees or a shelter in there. Okay, so we need safe and secure fencing. As I said, there's barbed wire is a definite no-no for horses. That's where they will get injured. If you do have wire fences, then it is important that we try and run electrical tape so the horses can't get close to it. And also a good pasture. We want to make sure that they're not in a dirt paddock, that they've got some grazing, as they do spend most of their time grazing, and some fresh water. So depending if you've got like a bathtub or something, as long as it's full and clean daily, it is important. If you're only using buckets, then you will need to check your water more regularly, so maybe 2 or 3 times a day, depending on the size of your buckets. So then we move on to signs of a healthy horse. So looking at our horses, it's important that we have a look at the overall look of the horse. So we're looking at things like their eyes, their nostrils, the coat, the skin. You can tell pretty much by looking at a horse whether it looks healthy or not. So with the eyes, you want to make sure there's no gunk. The eyes are nice and clear and they're alert. The coat, we're looking for a nice gloss to the coat. It doesn't have to be overly shiny, but you can tell the horses that have got really dull coats, usually there's an underlying issue there. So nostrils, we want them free from discharge. So if you do see a horse that's got a bit of a runny nose, just have a look. They're the ones that come along to rally days, and sometimes you're not aware that there's an underlying issue there, but you can usually tell if you check their nostrils. If they've got a lot of gunk pouring out, then maybe just ask the riders to check the horse that there's nothing else going on there. So the skin, again, we want to make sure that it's free from cuts and also little lumps that could be from bites and things under the skin. Any irritations. Our gums should be nice and pink. We don't want pale gums. And the temperature of a horse should sit between 37 and 38.5. Okay, so when we're approaching and catching a horse, so a lot of the young kids, they get very excited and they'll run down the paddock to the horse. So we've got to remember to teach them, don't run towards the horse and never approach the horse from behind. So we want to walk steadily towards the horse, towards the shoulder. And when we're close enough, call out the horse's name so that if they're eating, they don't get a fright when we're walking up behind them. So you can also take a treat down to help catch your horse. And when you've approached the horse's shoulder, you can give the horse a scratch on the neck to let them know that you're there. And then we can gently slide the rope around the neck and put the halter on and give them another scratch. Okay, so leading. So a few points with leading. Again, with our younger riders, it is important that we teach them how to lead correctly. You'll often see a lot of the kids dragging the horse behind them. If that horse was to get a fright, the horse could potentially jump over the top of them. So we don't want that. So we want to teach our riders not to put any parts of their body or fingers through the loops of the rope. We want to gather up any excess loops across the palm of the spare hand, so we don't want to see the reins or the lead dragging on the ground. We never want to see the lead put around the neck or shoulders or waist, and believe it or not, a lot of the younger riders will just do this, and it is important that we get onto that straight away and tell them that's a definite never do that. So we always want to teach our riders to stand at the horse's shoulder when leading. So then we've got tying up the horse. So again, as a coach, we will need to teach our riders how to tie up their horse safely. Now, there is a few different slip knots that you can do. We do have one pictured there that is a standard slip knot. So we want to make sure that we only ever tie the horse up if we can do so safely. So we never want to tie the horse up to something that's not a fixed object. So if we're tying to a float, we want to make sure that that float is attached to a car. We can't just go and tie it to the float. The same if we're tying it to a post or a rail, make sure that that rail is supported in a proper support rail that's used for tying up. And again, we want to make sure that anything that we tie to has a piece of twine to it. So if the horse does pull back, it can break and give way. So we always tie up using the quick release knot, and we need to tie it the correct length. There's no point teaching the riders to tie the horse where they can still get their leg over the lead. So we want to make sure that we tie our horse up so it's got a little bit of movement, but it can't get its leg over the lead. And we never use the reins to tie our horse up. So we've got a little video of a slip knot. Okay, so again, that was just one of the slip knots. There are a few different slip knots that you can do. And the other important thing is that a lot of riders these days will tuck the ends of their lead through that knot, which that's okay. You can loop it through. There is a way of looping it through, but it's important that we don't ever tuck the tail right through, because then that becomes a knot that's not a quick release, because if you pull on that, it gets jammed on that tail. So it's important that we don't ever tuck the tail right through the end. Okay, so that brings us to the end of tonight's presentation. So thank you all for coming along and listening. And we do have another webinar coming up on the 5th of April, which will be module 3. So there is 4 modules to this coaching manual. So if there's anyone with any questions, we can answer those now for you.